I do have several peak poses that I was trying to decide on. But I think we're going for the dragon pose this evening. Anyway, we'll get there. For now, we'll find our seating pose. And just find a comfortable posture to settle in, find our breathing, and find where we are at this evening. Noticing the coolness of the inhalation, and the warmth of every exhalation. Noticing why we're here and what we're here to do to practice this yoga. Where in many ways we're here to get our heads screwed on straight so that we can think right and to be mindful. And Alan Watts has this great story about an ancient king of India, King Yajnadatha. And he wakes up one day and he pulls up his mirror. He looks at himself and he says he has no head. He's looking at the wrong side of the mirror, you see. And he summons all of his servants, like, I've lost my head, I've lost my head. And nobody knows how to talk him into the realization that he has a head. And it's an old Indian story, and I guess the moral of the story is that you can't find your own head the way that you might find somebody else's. That you have to find your own mind by feeling from within, where everything else that we experience with everybody else and all of the outside world, we see it from as the outside. But when we're here practicing our yoga, we're here to notice what we're feeling and what we're being and where our head is from within, so that we can bring that mind into alignment with our body, with our posture, so we can find even a steadiness of a simple seated meditation posture. So we can find the simplicity of some poses and just see what it is and what it feels like, how it is like to be, how it feels to breathe, noticing everything that's going on within us. Noticing how we can use what's going on within us, where we can channel some of the energies that we have in our body to move the body, to move the mind together. As we bring our hands to our heart, simple motion. We'll begin with an Om this evening. Begin to open our eyes. We'll start with a little butterfly, as we can bring our soles of our feet together and just test how open our hips might feel. Be hooking the toes as we open the heart to try to sit tall. The taller that you sit, the more that you can flush your sit bones down to the mat. Maybe trying to open those thighs. You can roll the thighs back and the calves forwards. Opening the feet like a book. Just notice where the hips might be this evening. Taking some full breaths of air all the way down to the lower back. We can bow a little bit, bringing our heart to our toes. Noticing where it feels comfortable to warm up the lower body. Coming back up. We could bring our hands to the outsides of the legs and bring our knees together. Let's bring this left leg out to the left. And this right foot comes into the top of the thigh. We can sit up tall, and we're going to find a reclined deer pose to open up that calf and that back of that left leg as we lean back onto our forearms, maybe looking up, opening our heart. Taking a full breath of air, sending that energy all the way down the left leg and out through the foot. Inhaling to lift ourselves back up and flipping our feet. Finding the reclined deer pose on the side. Maybe your right hand can grab that foot and try to bring it so it's in line with the hip. And then releasing, coming back to center. And we'll add a twist if we bring the left leg, or the right leg into a cradle and place it by the left hip. Finding our Matsyendrasana twist. So we can start here, a seated pose, finding both sit bones on the mat, lifting up, lengthening the spine. And then we can bring this right elbow to cross over, that is the right leg that is on the left side. And that hand can reach for the foot. You can bring your left hand around and try to reach for, is that the left foot? Let's see if you can find it. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. Sometimes it helps to take this hand and pull it in if you would like to try to grab that toe. Then you can cross the elbow once again, opening the heart, lifting up through that left side body, lengthening the side body. And we'll release, finding whatever's successful at the beginning of our practice and not pushing too far as we're beginning to warm up the body. And let's place this left heel by the right hip. We can start by sitting tall, finding our sit bones, our weight evenly on both sides of the hips. Crossing this left elbow over the left leg as you twist your heart to the right. Maybe reaching that right hand for those right toes, right hand for the right toes, which is on the left. Maybe you can use your hand as a little guide to find it. Cross that left elbow over. Taking a full breath into the twist. Inhaling to lengthen, exhaling, getting rid of all the stale air as we twist. And then inhaling back to center. Unwinding the legs. And we're going to find our kneeling posture here. With our hands and our hearts. Stepping this right leg out to the right for a gatekeeper pose. So keeping those hips square. Our arms can come out to the sides, finding our full wingspan. Feel how that feels. Opening the heart, lifting our hands overhead. The right hand grabs the outside of this left palm, and we exhale all the way to the right, lengthening both side bodies so that right side body does not collapse, but it grows longer as you reach, trying to bring your wrists just above your heel. Exhaling all the way into the fold and inhaling back up to center. Bringing our arms out into a warrior two arms. Feeling how that feels to bring all the muscles in tight to our bones. This left hand can come down to the mat. And maybe you can lift that right foot all the way up for a baby half moon. Pushing out through that right heel and trying to lift it as high as the hip. Maybe you can look up overhead over your right fingertips. And maybe you can stay here if you like. If you'd like to bend the knee and see if you can grab the top of the foot. We can start to open our heart just a little bit. Finding whichever variation works for your level. And you're working within our body to find what feels right for us. As we inhale back up to center, bring our hands to our heart. Finding our kneeling and flipping sides, so that way the left leg is out to the left, keeping the outside of that left foot rooted into the mat. So you're pulling it inwards. Lifting up, lengthening our spine. This left hand grabs the outside of the right palm. So I can inhale to lengthen and exhale to fold all the way to the left, keeping both side bodies long, trying to keep the shoulders stacked on top of one another. Inhaling back up to center, using your obliques to lift yourself up slowly. Finding our warrior two arms. Feeling those muscles pull in, feeling the shoulder blades pull onto the back. And bringing that right hand down to the mat. Lifting our left foot up. Pushing up through that left heel, trying to bring that left hip stacked on top of the right so that our heart is open. And maybe staying here in our baby half moon, maybe you can bend the knee and see if you can grab the top of the foot and open the heart. Taking a full breath of air here, keeping those ribs pulled into the core. And releasing. Finding our way back up. And our hands to our heart. And down to the mat in front of us. Let's step this right foot out, finding our Prasarka Pada Tadasana, our wide-legged forward fold, keeping those outsides of those feet pulling inwards. We can inhale to lengthen, opening the heart, looking up. And exhale to bow, seeing if we can lift our sit bones up behind us. And exhaling, bringing that forehead a little bit closer to the mat. Inhaling again to look up and to lengthen. And exhaling to release. Let's wiggle our feet in a little bit by bit until we find ourselves into our forward fold. When we do, we can grab our elbows and let your neck release. Let's bob our head forward and backwards, left and right. Releasing the tensions in the jaw. Maybe working your way side to side, left to right. Releasing the elbows. Hinging from our hips. We can rise up, growing tall. Lifting up. Growing with a long spine. And our hands to our heart. Finding our feet parallel to one another. So we have a solid balancing posture. We're going to test our balance from the beginning in a tree pose. We can bring that right knee into a standing balance. That right hand can grab the ankle or the shin and see if you can place it either above or below the knee, but not directly on the knee. When you do, you want to see if you can open this hip up by pushing this knee and this whole leg out into that right, to the right. And you really want to find this as a hip opener. It should feel almost like a pigeon pose in how it's working on the hip, because that is our aim as much as our balance is finding our flexibility. So let's find our stability here for a moment and maybe grow the branches. Letting our arms grow tall, opening the heart, maybe finding a gentle back bend if you're stable. And keeping that hip open. We'll bring our hands to our heart, bend the knee, and release. We'll test our balance on the other side. Bring the left knee into the chest. The left heel comes into the inner leg. And we're opening this hip. Pushing that leg out to the left and out behind us. We'll bring our hands to our heart. Find our stability. Find where it is. It helps to keep the head delicately balanced on top of a straight spine. So you can imagine a line between the heel of your right foot coming all the way up through the back of your neck to the very top of your head. And if that's your center of gravity, then you should be stable. And we can grow our branches, keeping this left hip as open as it will be while we are stable. Opening the heart, finding a gentle back bend. And release. Bring our hands to our heart. Our feet can be about each 45 degrees, maybe a 90-degree angle at the heels as we bring our hands overhead, lifting up. We're going to find our standing crescent. The right hand grabs the outside of the left. We're going to exhale out to that right, hollowing out the left armpit, folding all the way to the side, keeping that right side body strong and long. Lifting back up to our center. Testing our weight with that right foot in the tiptoe. Finding it like a little kickstand so we can test our balance on the left foot. Lifting it back up, finding it where it is. Keeping that shoulder blades behind the earlobes. Lifting that right foot all the way out and to the right, pushing out through that right heel. find ourselves folding out to the right. Inhaling up the center. And bring our feet back to our starting positions. We can flip our positions, the left hand. We can give this right wrist a massage as we fold out to the left. Finding the full fold with our steadiness on both legs. Inhaling up to center. Using the left big toe as a kickstand out to the left. Testing your balance as we fold out to the left. Lifting it back up to center. And the third time you find your stability on that right foot all together, lifting this left heel all the way up into the left. Exhaling as we fold in the same direction as the foot. And then we're going to step that foot out into a wide-legged stance. Bringing our hands to our hips, opening the heart, finding our cactus arms with the shoulder blades behind the back, pulling down towards the hips. So the heart is open, we can bend the knees and give ourselves a goddess squat, letting our hips sink low, maybe getting them almost as low as the knees as we bounce those hips. Finding our strength here as we're pulling the outsides of the feet inwards. And exhaling to bring our legs straight and our arms straight and expanding in all directions. Finding the 5-pointed star as you lengthen your spine and try to grow as tall as you are, keeping the core in, pulling those ribs into the core. And from the core, bending those elbows back into our cactus and back into our goddess squat. And again, we're pulling everything inwards, finding our strength here, finding all the muscles that we have and drawing them in as we squat, maybe a little bit lower than before, keeping those shoulder blades behind the earlobes and on the back, pulling down the side bodies in the back. Exhaling as we release. Let's bring our hands to our heart, spinning our toes to the right, finding our feet about hip distance apart, the back foot about 45 degrees, so that our hips can grow square. And we're going to bow into our pyramid pose with our arms out in airplane. So try to keep those arms, finding our full wingspan with our heart open, pulling those feet together. Using your core to keep your upper body lifted as you pull those feet together. And we can stay here if you'd like, or we can find our bind with our reverse prayer, trying to bring those little fingers together first, and then all the fingertips, and then the heels of the hands, trying to flatten the back and bring that back parallel to the ground. We can lift up as we release the bind. Lifting that back heel as we bring ourselves into a low lunge, Anjaneyasana pose. So our hips can come square. We can bring our arms to our sides, using all the muscles on the outsides of the arms, pulling down and reaching for the mat beneath us. Finding our Anjaneyasana. So when we feel strong and stable in our feet, let's see if we can lift this right knee up and off the mat, finding our high lunge, letting our arms grow tall overhead, keeping those ribs pulled into the core, keeping the core very strong. And we can either stay here or bring that heart parallel to the mat, and maybe you lift it up into a warrior 3. Any variation of a warrior 1 or warrior 3 will work. We can exhale our hands down in front of the right foot, lifting that left heel as high as it will go into a standing split. And then those left toes come down to that mat. The left knee comes down to the mat. We're going to straighten the right leg and find our Ardha Hanumanasana, our folding half split. Bowing over that right hamstring, pointing those right toes, exhaling all the way down. And we'll walk our hands to the inside of that foot, bending the knee. We're going to find a lizard lunge.
So here you might want to lengthen the stance just a little bit. And I like to bring that foot a little bit out so it's staggered out to the right. So we can feel our hip really open up to the right. And you can find the weight onto this left hand. Open that right hand up to revolve. Or maybe you can stay here or grab the foot. Breathing for a few moments. Exhaling to release. Our hands come down to the inside of that right foot. Let's find a counter stretch if we lift the left hand overhead for an open twist. Feeling how that might feel different. Exhaling to release those hands to the inside of that foot. Let's wiggle this foot out to the left until we find a pigeon pose. So that we can come onto our forearms and take some deep breaths all the way down the lower back into that right hip. Trying to square those hips, trying to bring this left hip forwards. So it's in line with the right. Exhaling as we release. You can keep this right hip here. Maybe bring the right hip actually all the way down to the mat so you can sit on the right. Bring this left knee in to a 90-degree angle. And we're gonna find our swastikasana twists. So you can find a twist and see if you can see that. Is that the left foot all the way on the right? And see if you can maybe reach for it with that right hand. Exhaling into the twist. Inhaling as we walk our ways back to center. And maybe find a prayer twist with the elbow in the arch of the right foot. Lifting your heart up to your hands. Exhaling into the twist. And inhaling back up to center. Let's come up onto our hands. Keep our feet where they're at and just flip the knees. Finding our swastikasana on this side. So we can start with our twist, reaching our hands, walking like a clock all the way to the left. Finding as far as works for your body. Maybe you can just see the foot. Maybe you just imagine where it might be. Maybe you reach for it, whatever works. We're finding this twist and releasing. Walking our hands back to center. And the left elbow comes to the arch of the left foot. Finding our prayer twist. Opening that heart up to the height of the hands. So we're lengthening our spine as we look up, taking a deep inhalation to grow, and an exhalation into the twist. Releasing as we come back to center. Finding our pigeon pose on the left side, so we can even out and begin to build our way back up. So we're taking a few breaths as we try to pull this right hip in and forwards in line with the left. Coming up onto our hands. You could tuck those right toes behind you. Wiggle this left foot in and to the outside of the left hand. Finding our lizard. We can come back onto our forearms here. Maybe if you did it on the other side, you could bend the knee and reach for the top of the foot. Find it wherever it is. Releasing, and we'll revolve our lizard. So that right hand comes to the outside of the mat. The left hand reaches up, stacking the shoulders, growing tall, finding our full wingspan, keeping the side body strong. And exhaling our hands back to the inside of the foot. We'll find our counter stretch, the open twist, stacking those shoulders, reaching up. Trying to keep that right hip forward as much as it feels able. We'll bring our hands back to center. Our hands can come to frame this foot. We'll find Anjaneyasana, our low lunge here. Starting with our hips and shoulders in alignment. Then our hands come reaching for the mat beneath us, keeping this core strong all the way through the mid-body as your fingertips and the arms are reaching for that mat. Lengthening the side body so we're hollowing out our armpits. You can tuck those right toes behind you and lift up, letting your arms grow tall into a high lunge. Finding your strength and your stability. You can either find the warrior one or the warrior three, whichever variation worked on the other side, trying to test your balance wherever it may be. Our hands can come down in front of the left foot, finding our standing split with that right heel lifting as high as it will go. Those right toes come down to that mat, bending that right knee. The right knee comes to the mat. The left leg grows straight, Ardha Hanumanasana. Pointing those left toes, finding your splits wherever it is. Bowing over that left hamstring. Let's walk our hands forwards to the inside of this foot. Lifting that back foot, the back heel comes down to the mat. And we'll walk our hands. Walk our hands to the left foot. That right foot, we have to step in about hip distance apart, about 45-degree angle, and find our pyramid pose. So it might help to come tall, bring the hips square, and then find either a prayer or a reverse prayer, whatever helps you to keep your back straight as we bow, trying to hinge from the hips as you bow, trying to find that heart parallel to the mat. We also had the airplane variation on the other side, so feel free to find what works for your practice for this evening. And then our hands can come down to the mat, and we'll walk them back to center, pivoting our feet, our toes forwards. Exhaling as we bow. Inhaling to lengthen. Exhaling to bow. This time we'll bring our hands to our hips and see if we can keep that lower back straight. So we're lifting the tailbone up behind us and hinging from those hips as we try to bring our forehead to the mat. Maybe you can bind your fingers behind your back. Bring the heels of your hands together. See how that feels to open the heart and bring the forehead down to the mat. Inhaling to release those hands back to the hips and hinge from the hips as we rise back up to center. Hands can come to our heart, feet at about 45 degrees, bending our knees, bouncing our hips, finding our squat. We can open up, growing, expanding in all directions. Feeling the core grow strong and maintaining that core as the elbows come out to our sides, the heart comes open, the shoulder blades grow down the back, and bounce those hips low. Let's expand our arms, finding a warrior two, spinning the toes to the left. The left toe grows long, the right foot perpendicular. Flipping the left hand, reaching up and reach for the wall behind you. Finding the reverse warrior, the way of the peaceful warrior. Exhaling to lift up into our warrior two, keeping this left knee just above the heel. Bending the left elbow. Let's cross it over the left thigh. Finding our side angle. Keeping that right armpit hollowed out, keeping that outside of that right foot pulling in, reaching through your fingertips. Exhaling our ways back up into our warrior two. Open heart, finding the form, flipping this left palm, reaching up. Reach this left hand straight up, and we'll reach the right hand up to meet it. Trying to bring that heart parallel to the short edge of the mat. We'll bring this left hand down to reach for that right hip, finding the exalted warrior, opening that left shoulder, and finding our warrior two, keeping that bind, keeping this left shoulder behind that back. We can imagine how our side angle might look, trying to find a straight line between that back hand, that back foot, and that top hand, keeping the shoulder bound so the shoulder feels open. We can release that hand to that outside of that foot. The right hand can come to the hip. And we're going to find Ardha Chandrasana. So you can take this left hand, put it in front of the little toe, and stagger it out to the side, pushing out through the right foot, trying to stack those hips, stack those shoulders, reaching our hands overhead so that the arms are in one straight line, and the left or the right heel runs through a straight line through the spine, through the neck. When you find your stability, maybe you can look up at the hand overhead. Let's bring both of our hands down in front of the foot, finding a standing split. Keeping those hips square, finding our weight into our hands. Maybe you can step or hop, bringing that left foot back into a three-legged dog with the right leg lifted, finding our downward facing dog. And we're gonna play with our dancing dog. So let's reach this left hand overhead. That left hand can reach behind us. See if you can find that inside of that right foot. Lifting that heel, using that shoulder and the strength in the arm to lift that foot, and using the strength in the foot to lift that hand. Exhaling as we release. Hands coming back to center. Let's bring our feet down to the mat, taking our downward facing dog, bowing our heart to our toes, maybe looking up at the belly button. Taking a few breaths here. Let's come forwards into a plank pose. Finding our vinyasa, their elbows to our sides, our heart coming between the thumbs, opening up into a cobra. Finding a child's pose as we tuck the toes, lengthen the outsides of those arms, and push back up into our downward facing dog. Taking a few breaths. Lifting this left foot up behind you. Let's see if we can find a dancing dog. The left hand reaching for the left foot. So we're trying our same side practice. See if it's there. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. Maybe you tap it for a moment and step this left foot forwards between those hands, spinning that back heel down to the mat, finding our side angle pose with this left hand down on the mat. You can find it here if that's a better form for you. Finding our side angle, finding those hips in action. Both hands can come down to the inside of the feet, and we'll walk our way over to the other side. Windmilling up to our warrior two. So here we're looking to the right hand, gazing over that right middle finger, trying to find our full wingspan as you're pulling that outside of that back foot in. Keeping the core strong while we flip the right palm and reach up and reach for the wall behind us. Exhaling as we bend the right elbow over that right thigh, finding our first side angle on this side, finding wherever it may be. Breathing all the way down through that left side body, keeping it long, growing as long as that left side will grow. Exhaling to release into a warrior two. Keeping our footwork very strong as we flip that right palm. Reach up, reach straight up. The palm grows flat. The left hand grows up to meet it. And this right hand grows down behind the back, reaching for the left hip. See if you can hook the thumb and try to square those shoulders. So we're bringing our heart up to the ceiling. Exhaling into a one-armed warrior two, gazing over where the right hand would be. And we'll find a side angle pose, trying to find this straight line of strength between this left heel all the way through those fingertips, squeezing that left foot with as much weight onto the mat as the right foot. We can release the bind so that right hand comes to the outside of that right foot. Put a little bit of weight onto that hand. Find it where it is. The left hand can come to the hip, and we'll find our half moon. So this right fingertips come forwards and outsides of that right little toe, stacking our shoulders, stacking our hips, pushing out through that heel behind us. Finding your strength wherever it is, holding for about as many breaths as the other side, and exhaling to release our hands to frame that right foot, bowing into our standing split. And maybe you can step or hop or float, finding that right foot back into our three-legged dog. Testing our dog, finding where it is. You can bring that right hand overhead, reaching it forward, lengthening. And that right hand reaches behind us, trying to grab the inside of that left foot to find the dancing dog. Lifting that foot up as high as it seems to like to go, finding any stability that's accessible, and releasing with our hands to the mat, paddling out our feet. We're going to take a few breaths in our down dog. Looking up at the belly button, finding the forward fold. Squeezing our hands together, straightening our legs. And then we'll bring our heart between our thumbs, finding a plank, and lowering down for our chaturanga. We don't have many of them in our moon salutation, so let's make it count. Opening the heart, finding a cobra, our weight behind our fingertips and our knuckles. And finding a child's pose as we tuck the toes behind us, lengthening the arms and the side bodies, lengthening the spine, wiggling those fingers as far forwards as comfortable, and then pushing the weight into the fingertips and the knuckles as we find Ardha Mukha Shavasana, downward facing dog. Taking a few full breaths here, regaining our strength and stability on forelimbs. And we reach that right foot behind us and that right hand overhead. And see if we can find our dancing dog on two limbs. Find it, tap it, see if it's accessible. If it is, that's great. If not, that's okay. Stepping that right foot forwards to the outside of the hands, swaying into those hips, finding that left heel rooted into that mat, and finding our side ankle pose. Finding our side angle wherever it is, with our strength from the core. Let's see if we can lift ourselves back up. Straightening the legs, spinning our toes forwards, hands to our hips, shoulders on the back, and we're gonna bow. Reaching for the toes this time, hooking the toes with our fingertips and our thumbs, bending the elbows as we bring our heart closer to the mat, keeping that tailbone lifted. Exhaling to release. Walking our hands over to the right side of the mat. This left knee comes down. We're going to find our lizard again. But this time, let's see if we can find a little bit deeper. If we can come onto our forearms. Maybe you can get this left hand reaching underneath with your thumb down, reaching so you can grab this ankle and find if that's there. Maybe this forearm can come parallel to the short edge of the mat and your head can come down onto your forearm. See if we can sway into the hips and let that leg grow out and to the right. And we'll exhale and release, coming up back onto our hands, tucking the left toes behind you. Let's step this right foot back into a tabletop position. Finding our tabletop, we're going to thread the needle. So we'll start with the right foot behind us and this left hand overhead, pushing up to that right heel, expanding as you bring this left hand all the way out to the left and the right foot all the way out to the right. Trying to keep it lifted. We're going to thread the needle with this left hand reaching behind that right wrist. Noticing how that feels to open that shoulder. Maybe you can bring this right foot out behind you. And bend the knee. Any variation that works. I like to see if I can grab the top of the foot for the calf stretch. Pointing those toes. And we'll release, unwinding, stepping this right foot to the outside of the hands, lifting into our crouching tiger, Skandasana. Finding this pose wherever it is for you. Some of us like to do it on the knees if that's a little hard for you. Otherwise, you can always find it like a gatekeeper. We're squatting into this right hip. Maybe binding ourselves wherever accessible. We'll exhale and release. Walking, stepping, floating back to center. Finding Balsamo squat. Opening the heart in Balasana. Let's open our shoulders in a shoulder bind. The left arm reaches around the left leg or on the front, reaching for that left hip. And the right hand reaches around the back, trying to meet it. If you can bind the hands and stack the shoulders, trying to turn your heart towards the ceiling. Exhale and release. We'll bring our hands to our heart, our triceps to that space just beneath the knee, and that right hand reaches around that right leg. Left hand reaches overhead, behind the back. See if you can find your hands together right about at your hip. And when you do, you try to stack those shoulders and look up at the ceiling. We can exhale and release the bind. Bring our hands to the mat, our weight onto our hands. We have a moment for crow pose, bakasana, if that's part of your practice. If not, we can step into our crouching tiger on the other side so that right leg grows long. Those right toes lift up. You can bind the left shoulder. If you did on the other side, you can always work on your gatekeeper if this is not accessible. Let's release our hands to the mat, walking our hands forwards to the inside of this left foot, finding our lizard on this side as we come into our forearms. We can bring this left forearm parallel to the short edge of the mat. This right hand can reach underneath, reaching so that the thumb is down towards the heel, and see if you can grab your ankle and stack that shoulder all the way down to the mat, if that's accessible. Breathing into our left hip. You can let the left knee come out to the left if that hip wants to open anymore. And then we'll release, coming back onto our hands. Stepping our left foot back, and we'll find our tabletop. So here we're going to bring the left foot behind us, and that right hand overhead. That right hand goes out to the right. This left foot comes out to the left. Trying to keep the hand and foot at the same height and parallel, finding where it is. And then you can thread the needle with that right hand behind the left wrist. This left hand, the foot can grow long behind you, and the left hand can reach up and off the mat. Maybe you can grab that top of that left foot, finding the bind, opening the calf, feeling strong in the core, finding your stability before we release. Our hands come down to the mat. Let's make a couple cat and cow positions to release anything else in the spine before our peak pose. So here we're going to bring this right foot behind us and step it forwards onto the outsides of the right hand, finding what would be a lizard on our forearms. You can always stay in lizard and practice this if this is what works for you. Otherwise, we can see if we can take this left hand and grab this ankle and come onto this left shoulder and reach this right arm overhead. If you're following me, you might have an idea where this is going. You can bend this right foot, and maybe you reach for it there. Maybe you thread this arm underneath the leg and reach for it there. Finding the dragon pose, the double bound lizard. So here it helps to be kicking that right foot into that hand. It helps to keep this left arm pretty well bent so that my heel is staggered a little bit from my shoulders, like, I guess, shoulder width apart from the left shoulder. The right shoulder is stacked almost on top of the left. And we'll release and unwind. It helps to bring the hand outside your center of gravity to the left to give you a vantage point to unwind and get out of there. All right, well, we'll work our way over to the other side. You can step or hop. I'm actually going to do this on this side so you can see how that looks. So we start from our lizard on our forearms. The left forearm comes parallel to the short edge of the mat. And the right hand reaches underneath to see if you can grab the front of the ankle with the thumb down. See if you can bring that right shoulder down to the mat with this right arm bent pretty well. And when you do, maybe you can lift your left hand and stack those shoulders, trying to keep the more that you give strength into this arm, pulling this heel isometrically towards your heart, the more strength and stability you're going to have. So then we can thread this left arm underneath the left leg, bend the right leg, and see if you can find the top of the foot. Finding your stability in any variation of any of the steps that it might take to get into the dragon pose. Never feel like you need to find the full expression of any pose. You find what expression works for you. And we unwind. And let's find our tabletop. And let's actually come into a seat. Finding our seated posture. We're gonna cradle our hips after opening them so nicely in the lizards and the dragon. And place this right heel the outside of this left hip. This left heel can wiggle over to the right. And here we're gonna find our cow face, Gomukhasana, with our arms growing long. The left hand reaches behind the back. The right hand reaches behind the head. Seeing if we can hook those hands between our shoulder blades, trying to bring those shoulders in alignment with one another, opening our heart, and then we bow. Inhaling back up to center, releasing the hands. You can find a simple twist, Matsyendrasana twist. You can, as we began with, see if you can hook that hand around this is the right toes, and the right hand reaches around the back. See if we can hook those fingers and toes. Maybe we just imagine we're doing that so that we feel how that might feel to lengthen that shoulder behind us. And we'll release. Find our counter stretch. Off to the left. And unwind back to center, cradling this hip, this leg in our arms, and setting this right heel down to the left hip. And we'll cradle the left leg this time. Rocking it side to side. And placing this left heel outside the right hip. Opening up to sit tall. Finding our arms grow long. And it's the right hand behind the back, the left hand behind the head. See if you can find those fingertips coming together. Take a nice deep breath into that shoulder. I like the breathing into the shoulders with the cow face spine. It seems to really open up that upper back. And we'll release the hands. We will find our twist with this right elbow crossing over the left thigh. And exhaling as we look to the left. Maybe your left hand can reach around and imagine you're finding that right toe, the right foot. If you think you might actually be able to get there, I like to take the left hand and grab the right thumb. So you use your fingers, you take your right fingers and see if you can grab your toe. And then you kind of bring the thumb to the toes. And that puts your fingers there. It's a little self-adjustment. So you find whatever might work for you, and we'll find our twist, with or without a bind. Exhaling into our twist. Inhaling to release, coming back to center. And we'll find the counter stretch off to the right. Coming back up to center, cradling this leg one more time. And then we're gonna roll onto our backs for our happy baby. Grabbing the outsides of the feet, bring those legs out beneath the armpits, the tailbone rooted, rocking side to side. Again, our hands can come to the outsides of the knees, bringing them together. And our hands can come to the lower back. As we bring the knees to the ears, finding hide the ears pose, our full forward fold. Taking a few breaths here. And then vertebrae by vertebrae, flattening yourself out. Letting your spine grow long. Your hands at your sides. With a deep exhalation, releasing. Noticing how straight the spine might feel. How freely the breathing flows. Noticing that space where the back of the neck meets the spine. And vertebrae by vertebrae, bringing your awareness down the spine. Noticing how each part of the back, how every nerve might feel. You can say to every part of your body that you become aware of, just say, that's okay. Bringing your mind through the mid-back. You can tell your body, I want to be your friend. Bringing your awareness all the way down to the very base of your spine. You can take a deep breath. Say thank you to everything that our back does for us to keep our body in alignment, to keep our head screwed on straight, where it is, where we are. Bringing all of your awareness into your entire body, noticing how it feels to have a body. A little bit of gratitude for every breath of air that we can feed our muscles with, that we can feed our nerves and nourish our bodies. And with awareness of this peacefulness we have created together in that space within us, how
easy it feels just to lay still and to be present and aware. Bring that awareness into the fingertips and the toes as we begin to wiggle them. Bending the knees into your chest and giving yourself a hug. Rocking side to side, left to right. Rolling over onto the right side body in a fetal position. Using the arm as a pillow. Feel yourself renewed with every breath of air. Push yourself up into a seated position with our hands at our hearts and our eyes closed. I'm so grateful to all of my beautiful yogis for joining us in this practice this evening. You should be proud of yourselves for making this time to take care of you, to practice this yoga. The love and light in me honors that love and light in all of you. Namaste. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for practicing with us. That was great. You guys did wonderful.
Thank you.
I'm gonna miss you guys the next couple of weeks.
Thanks,
I
Wade.
know.
Well, have a wonderful holiday season, everybody, and we will hit the mat running in January. We'll have a really good start.
Okay. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Merry
Happy
Christmas.
holidays. Bye.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Bye.
Yay, 2021. We need a new one.
Yes, we do. Bye.
Bye.
Have a great night.